What is going on, you guys? Welcome to another episode of Best Ball Theory, the place where we spend all the time drafting teams on Wednesdays. Like yesterday, we talked to super smart people from around the industry, like Pat Crane and many others. We don't do a dedicated show to random little specific strategy elements that we can use to become better best ball players. Today, we're going to talk about how to attack each specific tournament that happens in best ball. It's kind of a new element of best ball, right? We've mostly just had one big tournament on each site every single year, right? For the last few years. Now we're getting Best Ball Mania. We're getting the puppy. DraftKings has like 10 tournaments open. Drafters has tournaments. FFPC has tournaments. There's all kinds of different contests for us to attack. And a lot of them all require us to think different about the optimal strategy to apply for that tournament. So today, that is what we're going to get into. How should you attack the puppy? How should you attack Best Ball Mania? How should you draft on drafters? All those things are different, and we'll get into a little bit why. All right, guys. This is so funny. I'm not doing this, but Tony has us covered with the Voldemort saying, do what Tony says. That which shall not be named is important. It does help. It does help the channel. It doesn't help the channel if I beg for it, though. So it will forever be Voldemort here on Spike Week, no matter what Rob says. So also, I'm feeling very self-conscious because I think I got my audio and stuff figured out, which I've been struggling with for the last few days. If something is going wrong, if I go muted, if there are issues, please let me know. The life of streaming, the things that you're self-conscious about. I have to wear my AirPods when I do this because it drowns out some of the sound of my voice. And I've done it God damn it, Tom. I know I'm not on mute because I can see that I'm not on mute, but I appreciate that was good. I appreciate it. I respect it, but don't ever fucking do it again. No, seriously. So I have to wear. So like, I'm sitting. I'm talking to you guys. I'm not talking to anybody. There's nobody in here, right? I can't talk like to my computer screen without the headphones in. Can't do it. Physically cannot do it because I've always, before the Spike Week stuff, like doing RotoGrinder streams and like doing the podcast with Blender for DFS, doing all the different content and stuff that I've done, it's always been communicating with somebody, and I just wear the earbuds. I've pretty much always done the earbuds. I did like Beats and some Bose headphones and stuff, and just for whatever reason, I've always liked the earbuds. But I cannot now. It's so ingrained. I can't do it if I don't have these in and I don't have the noise canceling on. It drives me absolutely bonkers to hear the sound of my own voice. So I respect you guys, the people that are watching, for listening to this, because I can't even listen to the sound of my own voice when I'm talking about these concepts. So I am kind of excited for this particular episode because I think it calls a little bit back to, as most of you probably know by now, like I kind of come from a DFS background. It's how I got into best ball. I've played fantasy football my whole life, but I have not been an FFPC grinder. I haven't played a lot of super serious, high stakes, main event, all that. I used to play like maybe a main event team or two a year just because I enjoy fantasy football and it was fun, whatever. But that's never really been my thing, to be a big, fantasy football season long grinder. And so I was in the DFS space. I worked in DFS. I played very seriously DFS for many years now. Ironically, not quite as much right now at this exact moment because we talk about best ball all day. But coming from the DFS space, you learn over time how important the contest that you are playing in, the sport that you're playing in, the site that you're playing on, how important all that stuff is in terms of the lineups you should make. Could be showdown and even showdown. So tonight's a great example. There's the NBA finals are starting. Showdown on DraftKings versus whatever FanDuel calls it, showdown, MVP, whatever bullshit. They're like wildly different games, even though it's like, who do you like better on the Celtics and on the Heat? Well, what contest am I playing in? Am I playing in the $5 huge whatever DraftKings has like a $15 or $25 Millie Maker tonight? Am I playing in that? Or am I playing in like a 25-man field, 50-man field, 100-man field? Am I playing in that? Or am I playing on FanDuel, right? We have that now with best ball. And honestly, even like last year, we didn't have this specific element of this game. We obviously had a couple of different sites, right? DraftKings, and Underdog and Drafters. You had FFPC, but to the extent that we have it now and like the menu of options that we have, and not just the menu of options like right now through like these tournaments that are open right now, things that are still yet to come, right? Underdog just launched their first puppy. It's going to fill. It's, I should have looked at this before. Oh my God, my dark mode turned off. My eyes almost burned out of my sockets. The puppy is 40.5% full already, right? Best Ball Mania, for reference, is 10.6% full. So the puppy is going to be full in less than a week. Let's call it a week. The strategy that you should employ for a $5 tournament with a different payout structure, different amount of people that make the finals, right? Different amount of advancing, like different advancement structure on a half PPR site is different. It's not only different than a strategy you should employ for Best Ball Mania 3, it's different than a strategy you should employ on DraftKings. It's different, right? All these different elements about the specific contest are really, really important to how you should attack them. And that doesn't mean that there's one specific way to attack, right? The puppy versus Best Ball Mania or whatever. But what it does mean is you should definitely be thinking, when I'm drafting in the puppy, and I think this is probably the lesson among them all. We'll talk for 50 more minutes, but the lesson amongst everything, if you take away anything from today, that I think is the biggest mistake that people make in best ball specifically, probably in fantasy football too, even when you're drafting, say you're drafting multiple home league teams, multiple dynasty league teams, multiple main event teams or whatever. They don't think about like, oh, I drafted in my home league and I got Justin Jefferson there. So in the main event, I didn't get him. But like, you should hone in on a strategy for that contest. What you have done and what you will do in Best Ball Mania 3 should not impact at all what you do in the puppy. People will talk about that, right? So you go to, let's actually just go. Let's just share it and walk through some actual real life examples. So here's my Underdog page, right? I go to Underdog. I go to my completed. Here's what everybody does, right? I go to my completed teams. So I've drafted 52 teams in this between Best Ball Mania and the puppy, right? So I have 30 Best Ball Mania 3 teams. I have 22 puppy teams. What people will do is then go straight to exposure, and like this is their assessment of how their portfolio or whatever. And I understand that. So you see me, right? Gabe Davis, Trey Lance, Darnell Mooney, Miles Sanders, Donta Foreman, David Bell, Kyler Murray, MVS, Brandon Ayuk, Dearness Johnson. This all makes sense to me, right? These are all of my guys. You also see Gabriel Davis has $430 of entry fees. Trey Lance, Darnell Mooney has $135. So I bet you can tell really quickly if I go over here and filter that in the $5, Gabe Davis doesn't show up here anymore, right? Gabe Davis does it. I mean, he's on here somewhere. He's not like off the list. But I'm personally taking really big stands in the puppy on certain things, whether they're mispriced players or they fit my structures. As you see, there's not a lot of running backs up here. All the look at the running backs. Isaiah Spiller, Khalil Herbert, Rashad White, Tyrion Davis-Price, Kenneth Gainwell, Rojo, Melvin Gordon, Miles Sanders, D'Ernest Johnson, Tony Pollard, right? So you see the types, and I'm obviously taking a stand on Trey Lance in the puppy. In Best Ball Mania 3, we can go ahead and look at it. Oh, maybe we can look at it. Hold on. Now let's look at Best Ball Mania 3. Trey Lance is up here, 24%. Daniel Jones is actually my highest. I have Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones over Trey Lance. I have running backs fairly similar, but you see a lot of Saquon, right? You actually see Nick Chubb. You see Javonte Williams. You see Travis Etienne, right? You do see a fairly similar wide receivers, but Josh Palmer is up here. DJ Moore is up here. Drake London is up here. Justin Jefferson is up here. Albert O is up here. He was not up here. And I don't even know if I've taken Albert O in the puppy, but that was a miss on me from an ADP perspective. But you can just see some of the differences in how I'm attacking the two tournaments, right? And so you could probably see in the puppy a structural stance I'm taking, right? Versus Best Ball Mania 3, where you see some of those second, third round running backs in here a lot. I mean, you'd probably be surprised to see Nick Chubb. You're probably not surprised to see Javonte Williams. Probably not surprised to see Saquon Barkley if you know me. Miles Sanders, same thing. But, some of these running backs that you see on here are guys that aren't up that high on the list in the puppy. But I have a belief in what I believe is the best way to attack the puppy specifically. As you saw, I think my bet personally is that Trey Lance is about to rocket ship up in ADP. And given this little pocket of time, I'm just taking him. And that is going to be like part of my Trey Lance stand for the entire summer. And I think the best way to attack this specific tournament is Trey Lance. It doesn't mean that I don't believe Trey Lance was part of the best way to attack Best Ball Mania 3 to start. I mean, you saw he was my third highest owned quarterback. But I was taking a little bit of a different approach at the very start of Best Ball Mania 3 than when the puppy, when like ADP's really locked in. I got really comfortable with how I felt about drafts and all of that. Plus, you also see here, like Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis started with an ADP in like the 70s or 80s in Best Ball Mania 3. So I was just drafting him every draft. Like I literally was drafting Gabe Davis in like every single draft. Now in the puppy, I'm still drafting Gabe Davis because I want him, but it's not like a every draft priority until his price corrects type of situation. And honestly, I wish I had drafted more Trey Lance to start Best Ball Mania 3. It's obviously, I'm sort of taking a pause other than shout out Nick Rudman and Peter Overzet for the Underdog Cardio Club, which I did my first Underdog Cardio Club draft today. And I did take Trey Lance. But I didn't know 100% of what my strategy was when I first started. It takes a few drafts to figure some of that out. Gabe Davis was definitely one. MVS was definitely one. It was actually Daniel Jones that was one of my, I was drafting a lot of elite quarterback with Daniel Jones in early Best Ball Mania 3 drafts because I thought his price was terrible. And I actually still do think his price is terrible. But I've now kind of pivoted in the puppy specifically to this Trey Lance bet, right? That he's only going to keep rising. And I think since the puppy started, he's gone up like six ADP spots. So that bet, and maybe I'm the one that's doing that. Maybe he's not actually going to go up, but I just keep drafting him. So that's the reason why he's going up. But you know what I mean? That was a bet that I made on he's a value. It's not just that he's rising, right? Guys can rise and I don't give a shit. But if guys rise and I think that they're already I believe passionately that they're a guy I want in my portfolio for many reasons, including the fact that they're a value, I want to draft them. And so I wanted to bring that up to show like a real life example between two tournaments. And these are two tournaments on the same site with the same scoring structure with fairly similar payout structures, not quite the same. There's not, quite as much chaos in the puppy as there is in Best Ball Mania. But this one tournament, A, is $5 versus $25, which for anyone is, and it's 5x more expensive to draft a Best Ball Mania team. The one that is more expensive is open for the whole summer. So like I've drafted 30 teams, I got 120 more to go. The puppy is open for 7 to 10 days, and it is only this little time pocket. And so I'm going to attack this little time pocket and scoop, for me personally, the picks that I think are all the best and just take stands in that specific tournament. Now, over my entire portfolio, right, we're going to get to August or September. If Trey Lance gets steamed in Best Ball Mania, I'm a little more comfortable just having my 15 to 25% Trey Lance or whatever, right? You guys know me. I want to be over the field on Trey Lance. Come on. But in Best Ball Mania, I'm more comfortable kind of playing the whole draft cycle as one big contest, right? I am certainly still, again, Trey Lance is my third highest owned quarterback in Best Ball Mania 3. I'm really, really high on Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones in particular. So like, it's kind of like those three guys were like early stands. Then we got to the puppy, and I decided that in this particular tournament, with this particular draft market, et cetera, with this particular price point, with all of that stuff, with the new information that we have, that's another big thing about the puppy. We already actually have more information than we had when Best Ball Mania started, right? You get little things like Jarvis Landry signing, Darrell Williams signing, etc. But like, we have like Trey Lance is out there practicing. Travis Etienne is out there practicing. Michael Thomas is not. Different things like that. We are already at an information advantage compared to when Best Ball Mania opened. So you just take in all these factors and you attack that tournament the best way you think you should attack that tournament. The mistake, like I said, when I first pulled up my screen, everybody does. They just go to their exposure page and they say, this is my best ball portfolio. But like, that isn't if you were to play a DFS slate on a Sunday, how you would play the Thunderdome is very different from how you would play a Millie Maker. A Millie Maker is different from how you would play the slant. If you're familiar with DFS, like the $9 slant is actually a very different, even though it's a large field, low dollar tournament, it's actually a very different, your competitors are different. The ownership is very different. And all of that is the $3 play action. All of these contests, right? All the way up to the Thunderdome, the luxury box, obviously cash games, all of that stuff. Every contest is different, and you should play your play style. The best team that you should play is different in the Thunderdome than in the Millie Maker. And thus, in Best Ball, we have that element where there are different optimal approaches to each tournament, but we also have even crazier different variables. Like this puppy, launched after, and it has a different competitor base based on the price point. But B, it's open for a week in May and June, late May, early June. It's open. So there are so many elements about this tournament that are just wildly different than every single other tournament that exists. So you should not treat the puppy the same as you treat Best Ball Mania 3, right? What does that mean for you? Tony says our exposures are so different. That's how it should be. You have an approach to how you think is best to go after these tournaments, right? I that's one thing I feel like really passionate about. We're sitting here talking Best Ball Theory, right? That's the name of the show. And my theoretical opinion is that I'm here to like talk through ideas, to brainstorm, to talk about maybe some experiences or some different concepts that I'm thinking about. I don't know. Are they right? I really don't know. I don't have all the answers. I'm not a genius. I'm not an expert. I'm not any of that. But the point is theoretical. Our exposure should be different because you won $1 million last year. So this might be a bad sign for me. Our exposures are very different and you won $1 million playing best ball. So maybe you used up all your run good. Maybe this is a good thing. We're going to spin. This is a glass half full show. We're going to spin this into a good thing. You used up your run good last year to get your milli. Our exposures are very different, which means I'm on the right path this year because it's all about to collapse for you, Tony. But you are developing your strategy for the tournaments that you're drafting in, and I'm doing the same thing. I see a lot of people just going in and being like, oh, I like this guy, I like that guy, or I like this stack, or I like that stack. And then the puppy closes, and then they just go look at their exposures for the year, and they're like, oh, yeah, look, I got X percent of this guy, X percent of that guy. Okay, well, how much do you have in the puppy? Why? Why do you have that much in the puppy? I don't know. I liked him that day. I liked him. I liked that guy for that week, as opposed to planning out a specific strategy for each contest that you're entering. I did want to run down really quick. I'm also going to share my screen again. And hold on. Oops. All right. Let's go to share this. We're going to talk about a couple of the tournament types and the differences, right? Before we do this, let's hit a couple questions. Jake says, look at that Lance exposure, 63%. Yep. No comment. We don't need to talk about Trey Lance anymore. Nez, I love using the puppy to get crazy within reason. I love that take, actually. It's also a great experimental ground. I feel the same way about the $5 on DraftKings. It's like, honestly, if I won 50 max the $5 on DraftKings over the course of this summer, so I have 150 out of, 900,000 entries. Like, I mean, I'm not going to win $1 million. And that's okay. But it is an experimental ground with very minimal investment that allows me to do some of these crazy ideas that maybe I don't want to do in Best Ball Mania or another contest, and experiment with different things without, I'm not putting that much of my bankroll into play on those. Plus, in that type of contest, it can be more beneficial, particularly on DraftKings. In the DraftKings $5, doing as Best Ball Moderate says here, excuse me, got the hiccups, a lot of exotic constructions, trying out crazy constructions, trying out unique starts, trying out unique players at the end, trying out different stuff. It can, as long as you're within reason, as Nez said, within reason, it can work, period. If you're good at this, you're drafting still structurally sound, you're not reaching 4 rounds for players, all that kind of stuff, it can work. And this provides a ground for you to figure this stuff out. And so it's a combination of kind of both of the things that we talked about. It's the perfect place to do some of this stuff. Or I'm now employing a strategy that, okay, I drafted 30 Best Ball Mania 3 teams. Now we get into the puppy, and now I'm like, okay, now this is how I feel about Saquon Barkley is my favorite pick. Trey Lance is my favorite pick. This stack is the edge. Or as you saw with mine, it's kind of like Trey Lance and 0 RB in the puppy is almost my stand, really. That's it. I'm just drafting all the 0 RB candidates, and I'm drafting Trey Lance. And then if those whiff, I lose I'm not going to get to 150 in the puppy. So I lose my 50 teams. Let's just call it 50. I draft 50 puppy teams. That $250 out of my best ball bankroll is pretty much gone. If Trey Lance and multiple early round running backs if Trey Lance fails and multiple early round running backs are just smashes, then I probably lose in the puppy, and that's fine. But I, as you saw in Best Ball Mania 3, am doing things in Best Ball Mania 3 that are a little bit different than the puppy. The structure is different. It's open for so many months. The ADPs were different when it first opened. And so I have a lot of Saquon. I have a lot of Javonte. I even have Nick Chubb. I have Leonard Fournette. I have James Conner. I have a lot of these guys that I'm not drafting in the puppy. But it was a strategic choice by me in that tournament that I thought was best, given a ton of different variables. Plus, like you said, the price point and all of that, knowing that there are going to be more, which we'll get into in a minute, knowing that there are going to be more tournaments, allowed me to kind of experiment with something like that. Yeah, David says that exposure is a 0 RB wet dream. It really is. And Matt says surprised to see Trey Lance there. Yeah, aren't we all? That Trey Lance up there. Sorry, Tom. I did see you post this earlier. I missed your question. Tom asks, $105 drafts or 4 at 125. What is your preference? This is actually a funny question because if any of you know me at all from the DFS space, I'm like a single entry to 3 entry max type player. I play, kind of the higher dollar, low entry contests. That is just what my skill set for DFS. I'm not a good MME player. I've just always had my success in the smaller fields, almost as small as possible. I'm very happy playing in a 50-man field, a 100-man field. Those are actually probably where I thrive even more so than 500 or 1,000, which a lot of people think those are small. And I call those medium, actually. The small is, 300 or less, 250 or less or something. And in DFS, that's where I've made my career or whatever in DFS, is through the 4 by 125. I'm going to play 3 teams, and whatever that bankroll that makes sense for me across those 3 teams, that's what I'm going to play. However, in best ball, I'm very much the other way. And I think that's that actually fits really well in today's conversation, because I think that's part of understanding the game type a little bit better, and maybe either how your skills apply to that game type, or just kind of how the game type works a little bit better. I every week in DFS, if that one, I say I just play a one team across a bunch of contests, smaller fields, single entry, whatever, in DFS. I mean, shit, not only do I have a slate the next week, I got Showdown on Sunday night. I got Showdown on Monday night. I got the primetime slate. There's so many ways to kind of run it back, if you will. You play NBA DFS or MLB DFS, just the next day, just move on to the next day. There's another slate in less than 24 hours. So you move on. In best ball, I got 1 year. We're doing all this. It's going to play out in 6 months, 7 months, whatever it is. And that's it. And then we're going to wait a little while. We'll do some bullshit during the off season. We'll do playoff contests. And then we'll come back next May and we'll do this same thing all over again. And I only get that one shot at it. So I prefer to do $100 $5 drafts compared to the 4, because I have my stands, I have my takes, I have my structures and everything that I like, but I can't even in a snake draft format implement them how I would want to. There's just nuances to a snake there. In DraftKings, I get to pick my players. There's a salary cap. There's no one else in my draft with me. In best ball, that is not the case. If I want 100% Kyler Murray on my teams and I do 4 drafts, I'm not going to get him on all of them, probably, unless I reach crazy, in which I'm probably then making minus EV teams. You know what I mean? So it's funny because I'm very different in the best ball space than I am in DFS. Also, would you stop with this Najee 101 thing? God, you're killing me. We'll hit some of these questions. Tony asks, there's a $20 tournament on DraftKings where there won't be too many 150 maxers. This is really interesting, because I think there's going to be a lot of 150 maxers in that $5 because it's just so easy to do. And when I say a lot, I don't know, because I don't think the mega sharks, the super sharks on DraftKings are going to, maybe they'll come in and just auto draft. I don't know. I don't know how many people will come in and do the $5, but I know that it's going to be a lot more, because even Joe Schmo off the street can come in and draft 150 teams in the $5, and it probably doesn't impact him financially. When you quadruple that cost, it does become more prohibitive to most people. And then having one contest that's a milli maker, and then having another at a $5 price point, and then having another tournament at $20. I don't know how they're going to fill that $20 tournament. So to your question, how I am going to approach it doesn't mean this is right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm still sort of barbelling the $5 on DraftKings because I think the ADP is so bad. I'm trying to withhold my bullets because I don't want to go too crazy to start. But I think the ADP is so bad, and the drafts are so soft on DraftKings that I am trying to attack that $5 with just how big of a field it is, how big the final is going to be, 1,000 people in the final, all that stuff. I'm trying to attack that a good bit more, attacking the early variance and the softness of the market now. What I will say is I do know, based on, and this too, Tony, that last year it wasn't like the market got really strong on DraftKings last year in August. It was just bad all year round. Absolutely all year round. It was horrible. I remember texting with my former boss, and he was just like, why did I draft any DraftKings teams before August, or before the week before the season? Because it didn't get sharper, and then you get the information advantage. So to your question on the $20 thing, with the $5, there's still inherent advantage in the uncertainty of the early part of the off season, right? It's variance. It's a roll of the dice. I got a little cube here. If I roll this, maybe it comes up on one side, and the Cam Akers situation hits for me, right? I just so happen to have Darrell Henderson and a bunch of my early teams on DraftKings, but because that contest is so top heavy, it is so huge, and the tournament final is going to be so huge, I really want more shots at the early super team. I get the Cam Akers injury. I get the Travis Etienne injury. I get the J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards injury. I get that stuff, and it works out for me with my early super teams versus the late teams that don't have access to that that situation. And so that versus the $20, I kind of want to see how the overlay situation goes. I personally, my bet is I don't see a lot of people really jumping to play in that tournament, and the $5 is going to take so long to fill because it needs almost a million entries to get in there, that I'm going to kind of almost barbell it with the $5 is my early part of the barbell, and the $20 is the late part of my barbell on DraftKings specifically, if that makes sense. That's not necessarily right, wrong, whatever, but I'm trying to think about it through some different lenses like that. Tom says, I'm a single entry guy in DFS, but in best ball, I just want to draft a lot. Yep, I'm the same. I mean, the drafts, it's fun. That's the part is we're sitting here talking about strategy on, what is it, the 2nd? What is today? My watch changed face. Yeah, the 2nd. June 2nd. And we're talking about, best ball strategy for the puppy and the DK $5 and the big dog and FFPC and drafters. We're talking about all this shit. But at the end of the day, this is fun. This is a hobby for all of us. I'm not going to be a professional best ball player. Maybe Tony and Liam are, but I'm not going to be a professional best ball player. So I want to enjoy this, and the great joy is doing the drafting part, because you get done with the draft, every draft, right? I autoed. So I mentioned the Underdog cardio club thing, right? So I take my dogs. I was going to do it. That's what I'm going to do, because I walk the dogs every day. I'm going to walk the dogs and do a draft, which I do very frequently. But now I can just use that as my cardio club post to Twitter and get a sweet tank. So I set out, right? Get the watch on, get the earbuds in, got a podcast going, get the dogs out there, fire up the draft. We start walking. Well, so when I leave the house, right, I go out to the right and I start to go around the corner. We live like at the back of the subdivision, like not on a cul-de-sac, but like in between two cul-de-sacs. And so like when you go out, I have to like literally like it's like a fork in the road kind of. I have to pick a way to go back out towards the front of the subdivision with the dogs. And the Wi-Fi still lasts for till I like get to the corner. Well, we get out there, we walk our first little bit, dog takes a leak and sniffing around and stuff. And like I was just so happened to be like at the tipping point when my pick came about of, are we on the Wi-Fi? Are we not on the Wi-Fi? And I have really bad service generally, kind of like right around that area. And so I came on the clock and I couldn't do anything. I just absolutely could not do anything. And so I'm trying, like, I can assure you, I wasn't trying to draft Derrick Henry. I'm trying to draft 0 Derrick Henry. Certainly in Best Ball Mania, I'm trying to draft 0 Derrick Henry. And I get auto-drafted Derrick Henry. So now I'm pissed. It's going to be a bad walk. But, I try to turn it around. I try to turn it into a team I still like. But to Tom's point, like that shit happens too. In DraftKings or in DFS, you might have, you forget to upload your CSV or whatever, something like that. But you don't have the stupid situation like that happening where, like, if I did 4 teams instead of 100 and that was one of my 4, I'd be tilting my face off. Like, I don't want any Derrick Henry on those teams. And it wasn't even like I wasn't trying. I was actively trying to do the draft. And it just didn't work out. So anyway, you get my point. Eric says, another Eric. Shout out to this Eric. Eric, I cannot pronounce that last name. Gagliardi? Gagliardi? Yeah. You're in we went through this last year where it's there's less Pauls this year, but there was a point in time last year where if you're new, A, thank you. But B, there was a time where the chat was only Pauls and Erics commenting. And so it became almost a little bit of a meme. Also, never any Erics with a K. Only me. I'm the only Eric with a K. So anyway, Eric says the 20 rounds on DK makes getting unique structure-wise way easier. 100%. 100%. It's like not even close, actually, how much easier and simpler it is to get different on DK and still make a good team, right? It's one thing. That's a mistake a lot of people make too, is if you draft a lot of teams, you start to like get bored building the same structure, maybe drafting some of the same players, whatever. And that's like a human element of this thing, is like, well, I drafted another 0 RB team. And it's like, is this next time? What am I going to do? Am I going to draft? Oh, yep. Another fucking 0 RB team. Oh, cool. Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown, and 0 RB. Sweet. Khalil Herbert again. Like that happens, but so it's a skill to not like succumb to getting too crazy and like now just drafting different to draft it. Like thinking different is very good. Drafting a fucked up structure that doesn't make any sense just to be different is actually horrible. You're one of the people paying the rake. But on DK with the 20 rounds, I never feel pinched on DK like, oh man, if I don't take a wide receiver here, it might get tight. if I don't take this quarterback here, well, maybe the quarterback thing, people love their quarterbacks on DK, but you know what I mean? If I don't take Kyler here, like I feel like I'm going to get pinched at the position. I just never, the drafts are so soft and the ADP is so bad. I never feel too bad on DraftKings, which in turn makes me able to implement structures that maybe I wouldn't do on Underdog, obviously because of the 18 rounds, but there's a lot of perks to doing that. But, you know, that's why we do it on DK as opposed to perfect segue into this. We are doing those kinds of things on DK because it's a different environment and the tournaments are different. So, all right, look at this dude. Look at this dude. What do you think? What do you think you're doing? Look at this. Do you see this? He might lay down right here. Nope, not laying down. I don't know what's going on. Watch out. 20 minutes. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Okay, let me share this back again. Oh, that's not what we're going for. There we go. They love to roughhouse, David. They are energetic. Now he's going back to get on the screen. They're energetic 75-pound Husky Shepherd mixes. They are also brothers from the same litter. They love to play this. Also, when the times that I stream is also always when they seem to catch a wave of energy, and that's when they play, chase each other. You know, so they sound very vicious probably sometimes in the background, like they'll be wrestling around over here, and probably to an average person, it looks like they're beating the shit out of each other, but they are not. That's just how they play. They're funny. Yeah, great point by Eagles. Don't say the word walk when dogs are around. Okay. Nick says on DraftKings, I like the hyper fragile builds, not necessarily 3 in a row, because you can still realistically get 10 or 11 wide receivers, and the PPR makes it more likely you'll be covered. And it's also way softer ADPs on the wide receivers. I totally agree. It's funny that you know, DraftKings is more PPR focused, and I draft all structures on DK too. But the thing that's big, that's so drastically different, is that I can take Saquon or whatever in the second or third round, Javonte in the second or third round. I can even take a running back in the first round that I don't love. Like, honestly, I'm not really drafting the first round running backs that aren't named Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey. I'm really not drafting any of them. But I can take Austin Eckler and never feel pinched at wide receiver, because I'm just always still going to have wide receivers I really like. You know, probably tight ends too. We'll see it. Quarterback's always the trickiest part of DraftKings. But I totally agree. Also totally agree with this. Matt, few things better than having two dogs. They are the best sometimes. They're brothers. So that leads to some I say that, you know, they mostly just play around, and that is true. They mostly do. But every once in a while, I mean, they're 75 pounds. They'd kill me. They could kill me right now if they wanted to. They're so strong that sometimes they don't know their own strength. So tournament, let's talk really quick for the last little while about the different tournaments that like are available to us. And maybe like you guys can have some ideas. I'll have some ideas, like how we approach some of the different things, because they're so drastically different. It really is crazy. And we talked about some of it, right? So the breadwinner of the whole best ball space, the big thing that we everybody's striving for, you know, it's the big marketing push, is Best Ball Mania 3 on Underdog. So huge field, second biggest field tournament that exists as of now in best ball. $25 price point, so you're not getting you're getting casuals, but not quite, there's not a lot of casuals drafting 150 teams at a $25 price point. So, it's a fairly serious group, relatively speaking, for a field that size. The payout structure, we've talked about that. We did go back on the channel if you want to get a little bit more of an in-depth discussion on the payout structure We streamed multiple drafts in Best Ball Mania 3 when it first came out and talked about the payout structure and like the regular season prize and all of that kind of stuff. But they have an interesting, payout structure, but it's also, like most tournaments, extremely top heavy to week 17. Basically everything that you care about from a monetary perspective comes in week 17. That's going to be a trend here amongst almost all of this. Obviously, we'll get the drafters in a second. The big thing for Best Ball Mania is it's the tournament that is going to be open from May 2nd till we'll see if it fills. I don't know. I'm not putting out a projection on that. We'll see if it fills. So that's a huge, massively important element to this, which again, we'll get to the puppy and what that means with the puppy. The difference between the puppy and Best Ball Mania 3 is massive. And so how do you approach a tournament that has a higher price point? Payout structure is a little bit different. Your competitors might be a little bit different, and it's open for 4 months instead of a week, right? It's open for the whole off season as opposed to the week. Next tournament type is like one of the large field DraftKings contests, which we just talked a little bit about. Tony asked about the $20, but it would be like the $5 on DraftKings, the $20 on DraftKings. I think they have another one too. What, the $3 20 max? Those kind of tournaments, I don't suspect they'll launch another one, but it's in the cards. Very, very, very similar to Best Ball Mania 3. Mostly lower price points, in particular the $5 Millie Maker that they have. So I would even probably, if I actually went back and reclassified this slide, I would say I would have the $5 as one, and then the other large field thing, because we just talked about the $20 versus the $5. But you kind of get the gist. If we're talking about DraftKings has basically large field tournaments that are also open for the whole off season, and then they have next bullet small field tournaments that are also open for the whole off season, except you can never fill those drafts except maybe the single entry contest. I haven't actually tried. I've just been focused on some of the other tournaments, but they have a $2,000 tournament. They have a $555 tournament. They might launch more. We'll see. Last year they were doing $100 and $200 single entries. So there's just a lot of options on DraftKings, especially from both large field and small field. But how you treat, all of those are different. They're different. You might even lump the small field stuff together. Problem with that is you might be able to fill a 555 tournament on DraftKings. Right now, you're not going to fill a $2,000 tournament. So that's like another different thing. If you want to play in the 2K tournament, it's probably going to be August. So, hold on, a couple more questions. Jordan had some good questions here. There's multiple good questions here. DJA Dog 3K, like DJ Augustine dog. Your DJ Augustine's dog. Terrible. That was terrible. Cut that out. Does DraftKings have single entry tournaments in the medium stakes? So right now it's just you guys are going to have to correct me because I haven't been drafting on DraftKings, and so I'm forgetting it's like a $15. Oh, yeah. Jordan says a $15 single entry, I think. Not really medium stakes, but it's that or the $200, I believe. Last year, they ended up having multiple. They kept rerunning the $100 and or $200 single entry on DraftKings. So I would suspect that happens again. Who really knows with DraftKings? They launched so many contests. It was really surprising. But I would suspect something like that happens again. DJ Augustine. Jordan also says, I desperately want to draft 3 at the onesie positions on DraftKings. I think maybe I need to push back on that, but the softness of the environment overall makes my running back, wide receiver feel so good relative to Underdog. I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, I don't really have a problem with that. I haven't built out my super, super firm like structure takes on DraftKings yet. It's still something I'm working on. Which I think I hit 50 in the $5 already. So I should probably have better advice to give on that. But I do think that's something you could do 100%. But the only thing I would say is, if you are still taking the Josh Allen's, and certainly Josh Allen, but the Mahomes, Herbert, Kyler, Lamar, etc. I don't think I would like force that line of thinking. And similarly with the tight ends. Not that you can't do it with those guys, but it's not just about how you feel about that group of wide receivers and running backs. It's about what do you win when you win, right? What do I win when Kyler is the guy I want to have in the playoffs? Mac Jones or Kenny Pickett are not valuable on that team right now. If you wait, and maybe you feel a little skittish on Trey Lance, and Trey Lance is your QB1. Okay, we take Trey Lance and we take Daniel Jones and we take Mac Jones. Okay, that looks a little bit better. But like, take Josh Allen. I probably don't want. I like if I need Kenny Pickett or Mac Jones, and I kind of like Mac Jones a little bit. If you need Kenny Pickett or Jared Goff, or those guys on a Josh Allen team, probably just shouldn't have fucking taken Josh Allen. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about that thing. Nerd Rage 2012 says, if you could go back in time and redraft last year's perfect roster, would people laugh at you and say, dude, are you reaching? Fun fact, man, you just set up a beautiful segue into, I'm posting this in the chat, our very own Silas Jackson at Spike Week did this exercise and reverse engineered last year's perfect best ball team. It was specifically focused on Underdog, but it's close. It's actually a close enough parallel on the other sites as well, and how you would go about doing it. And actually, you weren't really reaching. You could basically just draft the stone cold nuts. Like if you just had the 1-2 turn and you just took JT and Eckler, and then you just took Kupp and Chase, and then you just took Josh Allen, Mark Andrews, whatever. It all happened to align pretty perfectly. So it's a great question though, because sometimes that might be true. It was not true last year though. It's funny how that worked out last year. I'll get to this at the end, Tom. Okay, so let's run through the last little bit of tournament types. I know that's how it goes with me. We end up rambling a little bit. So we hit the Underdog big. We hit kind of the big tournaments that are open, the biggest tournaments that are open over the course of the whole summer, right? And each of those required their own specific way to approach them, right? Because in Best Ball Mania 3, in that DraftKings $5, like I talked about earlier, you get drafts are open for the entire summer. So you need to plan out a strategy for when you're drafting, right? And you can also go to Spike Week and see I wrote about when you should draft. Other people have also written about it too. But specifically for each tournament, exactly how much you draft and when will be different, because you're trying to take advantage of potential ADP gaps, things that are the market is wrong about. Right. You saw at the beginning when I show my Best Ball Mania 3 exposures that I believed the market was wrong about the very original ADP for Gabe Davis. Happened to be right about that one. I also believe the market was wrong about the very original ADP for Albert O. I was wrong about that one. And then in the puppy, it was like, okay, the market has gotten smarter on those guys now that I'm starting the puppy. Now, the big thing that I think the market is wrong about, Trey Lance. Right? So you see 60% Trey Lance. So we're doing all of those types of things. And it's not just player takes, it can be structural too, right? I mean, you saw 0 RB in the puppy very heavily, a lot more anchor and maybe dual running back in Best Ball Mania 3. Move on to drafters. This is like The one that's the most different. I think I've only drafted 10 teams on Drafters. I should have pulled this up. Sorry. I think I've only drafted 10 teams. 11. I've drafted 11 teams on Drafters, and I don't have an awesome take on where I stand because I actually drafted most of those in the first few days that they opened. But obviously, the huge difference in this is that it is open like those first 3 bullets. It is open for the whole summer, right? But it is a cumulative scoring format. So basically all these other tournaments are win your league, advance to the playoffs, and then it's 3 tournaments from there, right? Weeks 15, 16, and 17 are tournaments, and all the money is in week 17, which is fun. I love the format. But it's so drastically different from Drafters. And so understanding that, you need to deploy a different strategy, right? You need to deploy a different strategy on when you draft. You need to deploy a different strategy on what structures you're drafting, even what players you're targeting. I talked about this. I've talked about this multiple times. I wrote about this. I'm like, whatever on James Conner. I like him fine. I have him ranked higher than probably like ADP on Underdog and DraftKings, and I'm mixing him in. I'm very big on that week 17 game. So I'm certain I just really like the Cardinals period. And I like that game in week 17. So I'm not avoiding James Conner on Underdog and on DraftKings right now. However, on Drafters, I actually like him, even though I like the week 17 game. I actually kind of like James Conner more because you can get rewarded for that back that is elite while healthy, and you have less of the risk of the injury thing. Like James Conner misses a few games. It's probably it should be baked into your projection. You should not have him built in for 17 games. You have him built in for 14 games or whatever. But that's fine on Drafters. Fine. Like fine is a relative term. You're not hoping for it. You want all your players to play every game. But the players you target on Drafters can be different and should be different than who you draft in Best Ball Mania 3 and on DraftKings in the contests that are open right now. FFPC, as we move into another different format, is much more similar to Best Ball Mania and DraftKings, but obviously it is tight end premium. It is also a very different drafting environment. If you watched my good friends at Ship Chasing last night, they did an FFPC best ball draft, and you will see that the ADP is wildly different. Not just because it is tight end premium, which tight end premium, for those that don't understand, is that it's full point PPR on FFPC, but tight ends get 1.5 points per reception, and everyone else gets 1. So that helps level out the playing field of tight ends and the other positions. I do think people go way too far on the tight end premium thing, but I'm not an FFPC expert. I'll leave that to those guys. But you have another format, right, that has a different scoring structure, that has different. It's, I don't want to say easier. It is okay. It is easier to like make the final on FFPC. I believe the current best ball tournament is a 60 man final, 60 teams. Shouldn't say man, 60 team final. So, it's a little bit easier to advance, and it's a little bit easier when you get to that final. What does that mean, right? We have to deploy a different strategy for tight end premium, very different ADPs, smaller final, all those different things. When I draft on there, I shouldn't just go in, again, to the point earlier about Puppy versus Best Ball Mania. I can't just go in and say, this is part of my overall best ball portfolio. I have to apply a strategy to FFPC contests and that FFP. It's also different, right? My main event teams should look different than my FFPC best ball teams. For those of you who don't know, main event is the big season-long tournament on FFPC. And so it's those last two in particular, Drafters and FFPC, are so wildly different. But I I actually don't think people like if you really wanted to draft Best Ball Mania 3 just like the puppy and kind of just whatever, I'm just going to take Underdog the whole summer of Underdog and draft it in a certain way. I don't think that's what you should do, but if you can you hear me now? Hopefully we're good. My mic went out again. This fucking I told you at the top. We made it we almost made it all the way to the end. And I told you that I was self-conscious about the audio issues and we lose it. So the puppy, last two bullet points and then we'll get out of here. The puppy is actually even more so than drafters and FFPC is the most different one. And which sounds crazy because it's on a site that we already have tournaments and we're going to have the most tournaments and the most money on. Yeah, exactly. GA says, I thought my headphones went out. So did I. Gotta love technical difficulties. If you didn't watch Best Ball Bros yesterday with Pat Corrine, please do. He has cursed me with technical difficulties. I'm certain of it. It's Pat's fault. It is 100% Pat's fault. But it was also a really funny episode because I couldn't even make it through the intro without laughing because of when Pat shows up and we're having all these camera and I'm having audio issues and he's having camera issues and like there were sirens and there's construction. At one point, spoiler, at one point, Pat is holding his dog on his lap. So he's sitting in his desk chair. His dog was barking, wouldn't stop barking at something outside. And he's holding his dog in his lap, who's like not that much smaller than my dog's. And the dog is laying his head on, I forget what Pat's dog's name is. So I apologize, Pat, is still looking out the window, like around Pat's like neck and is like barking at the window. And Pat is just like unfazed and just like talking about like Derrick Henry or whatever. And I'm just like staring at the dog like in amazement. Like I love, you guys know me, I love dogs and stuff. And I like I said, I don't even really remember what he was talking about. I just remember the dog, Murphy. Thank you, David. Murphy. So Murphy is literally on Pat's lap, like head like wrapped around him, still looking out the window, even though he's like trying to get, the dogs get excited or whatever. You're trying to calm them down. And Murphy is still barking, whatever. And he never even stopped speaking. He was like, yeah, so Derrick Henry, he's turning 29 or whatever. And he's like, he's doing this. And he never even flinched when the dog is on top of him and barking. So anyway, yeah, it really was all time. Technical difficulties, background noise. My dogs are like fighting in the background. Murphy is on Pat's lap or barking at this. It was fucking anarchy, absolute anarchy. So I will get to it, David, 1 second. So the puppy, will kind of lump the puppy and the future tournaments into one thing that I think is a hugely important, right? So we're in this weird new element of best ball and fantasy football period where we're going to get all these tournaments that come out over the course of the summer and they're only in this little pocket of time, right? This first puppy is going to fill in a week at the end of May and early June. So we'll look back, certainly later this offseason, but absolutely during the regular season, playoffs, whatever. And there's going to be guys, ADPs that were terrible, players that got hurt, all of this stuff, just natural. Jamar Chase has the drops and he goes down around an ADP that doesn't occur in this particular tournament and will not occur to the final bullet in the future tournaments, Puppy 2,
puppy 3. Maybe they run super flex. Maybe they run another backyard best ball. Maybe they run another rookies and sophomores. Maybe DraftKings does come out with what people are asking about, the $200 single entry that's only like 1,000 people that is only that closes in like 3 days. All of those tournaments that are self-contained in a pocket of time are so drastically different, because Best Ball Mania 3, part of your strategy has to be, no matter how you're approaching the tournament, it has to be it has to factor in the fact that the tournament is for the whole off season. Best Ball Mania 3 opened on May 2nd, and it will close the day of the first game, assuming it doesn't fill before then. That is, we're going to have the things that we will be talking about then, right? We will, if hopefully you're still here with me, hopefully I'm still streaming on the night of the first Thursday night football game. We will look back at the things that we're talking about right now on June 2nd and laugh our asses off. Be like, oh yeah, that guy got hurt. That guy got hurt. That guy got cut, right? Like, oh, everybody's jamming Brashad Perriman. He got cut. Etienne hurt. Akers hurt. Michael Thomas, guess what? Hurt. Trey Lance, backup. And on down the list. There's going to be just all these things that happen, and that's fine. But we need to factor in the chaos of the off season to like all these, right? FFPC on up to Best Ball Mania 3. The chaos of the off season has to be a part of your strategy. However you want to go about that is totally fine, but it has to be a part of the strategy. These other ones, it's one, like the puppy one, this current puppy is a 1 week snapshot, a 1 week time pocket in late May, early June, where we don't know shit. EDP will have gotten a little bit better, certainly compared to early Best Ball Mania 3, but it's going to get more efficient in Puppy 2. It's going to get more efficient in, like I said, that DraftKings $200 single entry will have more efficient ADP than we have right now, and on down the list. So you can't just do what we did at the top, right? I'm trying to close this. Oh my God. Technical difficulties. You can't just go do what we did at the top, where you go here at the end of the summer and you say, look at this. This is my exposure. Because if you have 30% Trey Lance and it's all 6th round Trey Lance, and you haven't drafted him now when he's 9th and 10th round Trey Lance, that's a very different. This screen that I have up right now, yours will be very different. It may look the same with the amount of entry fees, the percent drafted, or whatever, but it is not telling the actual story about how you're going to win that tournament. How are you going to win the puppy? We're going to get to the puppy 3 or whatever, right? We're going to get to like a puppy that gives away $1 million first place. I don't know. I'm exaggerating. We're going to get to a contest later that we're going to have so much more and so much different information. And we have to approach that differently. And we certainly have to approach it differently than Best Ball Mania 3 now. We have to approach it way differently than this first puppy, where we don't know what we don't know right now. We don't know. But you have to approach the market as it stands right now, figure out your angle, and attack that tournament. And I think that's, I said it at the top, I think that is the biggest flaw probably that people make. We can spend all summer talking about specific players, structures, zero RB, robust RB, Trey Lance is a backup. We can spend all summer talking about all that bullshit. You could just really draft off of ADP with a very basic if I just said draft a 2-6-8-2 team keep it fairly close to ADP. Your team's really not going to be that much worse than anybody else's. Is it going to be worse? Probably. But is it going to be that much worse? Not particularly. But if you don't know how to attack individual contests, it's kind of like we did a show. The last time we did this, I think it was the last time we did this, because we had to have a week off because I had more fucking audio issues. Pardon my French. Was about how do I draft well? It's like the whole fantasy football space just spends the whole time talking about the shit that actually matters the least. Like, your take on which 5th round player is the best player? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Do you prefer Allen Robinson or Gabriel Davis? I don't know. I mean, we all have our takes, but what really matters is, how do I figure out how to apply those kinds of concepts, structure, player takes, all that stuff, to an individual tournament, right? Because they all have such different variables. And how do I become a good drafter, right? That stuff. Do that. If you can do that, whether you know the historical advance rates of 3 tight end teams, honestly, that doesn't matter. So, hit a couple of. I'm gonna hit mainly this one because I prefer to talk about dogs than really anything else. David asked, "What are my dogs' names?" So, oh, I don't have it up yet. Well, you can see the picture of them also. You can see it over my shoulder on. So you see them in live action, and you also see a picture my wife got me to put on the bookshelf. My favorite. So I'll just tell the full story. My wife and I wanted to get a dog. I actually didn't grow up with dogs, interestingly enough. We just didn't have them when I was growing up. I played tons of sports. My sister played sports. I just have one sister. My dad was a high school football coach and owned his own business. So like, he was like never home. My mom had a job as well. And it's like, we just didn't have the capacity to to take care of another living being. And so we didn't really have pets growing up. My wife was a huge, has had dogs her whole life, huge dog lover. Basically convinced me to get a dog in my mid-ish 20s, and I fell in love. My wife's parents' neighbor, their dog had puppies. They had like 8 or 9 puppies or something like that. We were going to get one. So we go out to see him. We pick out a puppy. We went on vacation afterwards, and our plan was to come back from vacation, and we were going to swing by my wife's parents' house and pick up our dog, right, that we had adopted, because they needed to get a little bit older. So we do that. Show up. They got 2 dogs. 2. We were only getting 1. They got 2. And she says, my wife's mom says that they didn't have an adopter for this other. My wife is literally walking down here as I'm telling the story. Telling the story about how we got the dogs. People were asking. So we didn't plan to get 2, but one of the other pups did not have someone that was going to adopt him. And so my mother-in-law just brought the dog in, and like, we get in there and just like hands me this cute little adorable puppy, and is just like, "Oh yeah, can you guys just like watch him for a little bit? Like, just a couple days or something, just so till we find somebody or whatever." And like, come the fuck on. I wasn't gonna take this however many month-old dog back to our house and like keep him for a week, 2 weeks, and then like give him to somebody else. Like, clearly she knew what she was doing. we fell for the whole trap. But the first dog that we were originally going to get, my it's funny because we talk about football all the time, but probably one of my few favorite athletes, as you see some of them on the wall, but Ken Griffey Jr. was like my guy. I got a poster over here. I'm trying to get up on the wall of Ken Griffey Jr. That was one of my favorite athletes ever, my favorite baseball player ever, and so Griffey is one of my dog's names. And then the other one, his brother, is who we actually had not planned to adopt, and my father-in-law nicknamed him because named him because he was a holy terror and crazy and all over the place, and he looked very, very, very much like the Tasmanian devil. We called him Taz. So it's Griffey and Taz are my two dogs' names. So you got the full story. Now you know exactly how I got my dogs. Perfect end to the show is me getting to talk about my dogs instead of talking about fantasy football. Thank you for hanging out. Tomorrow we're back in the draft streets. The fun part. I know this is like I like to nerd out and talk about the strategy stuff, but tomorrow we will be drafting a team. Same time, 5 p.m. Eastern. We're I need all of us. Underdog has been stealing the show, dropping puppies. They had Best Ball Mania or whatever. Drafters is a company I'm really excited about. I'm really excited about their format. I'm excited about their tournament that has $1 million prize pool. So we're getting back into the drafters streets. We talked a little bit about them today in terms of how crazy different the strategy is. And I like figuring out those different strategies. So tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, we'll be back here drafting a team on drafters. And I may or may not be giving away a free ticket to the drafters tournament. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. I'll see you guys tomorrow.